The landscape has always occupied a special place in the southern heart. Broad winding rivers, majestic forests, and fertile marshes provide us with food and shelter, employment and recreation, and satisfy a deeper need for natural beauty and a sense of place. Here at Eufaula National Wildlife Refuge, the chapters in our long relationship with this land can be read in our varied habitats and in the wealth of plants and wildlife. There are stories of cooperation, of success, and of a bright future. Many stories are still being written as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service manages these habitats to support migratory birds and endangered species. Eufaula National Wildlife Refuge was created with the assistance of local people who wanted a refuge for waterfowl that offered abundant wildlife and lush scenery. That bond remains strong today. The refuge is located 5 miles north of historic Eufaula, Alabama on Highway 165, just 1.5 miles off U.S. Highway 431. The refuge offers local citizens and other visitors opportunities to come face to face with our natural world and to be part of the continuing story of this southern landscape. Long before the first European settlers came to the area, the Chattahoochee Valley was home to the Muskogee Creek Indians. Then, old-growth forests covered the land, and creek villages were scattered along the riverbanks. Today, the landscape you'll see around you is very different. The old hardwood stands are gone, and the waters of Lake Walter F. George, also known as Lake Eufaula, cover much of the land where the Indians lived and hunted. What caused those changes is part of our story here at Eufaula National Wildlife Refuge. In the early 1800s, settlers moved into the area. A prosperous town soon developed as a trading center and a port for steamboats plying the Chattahoochee River. First named Irwinton after its founder, the town was later called Eufaula after one of the Indian tribes in the area. As the town grew, more and more cropland was needed, so old-growth forests were cleared until very little was left. After World War II, when agriculture declined, commercial pine forests were planted in the fields. The landscape changed again. Through all these changes, the wildlife that had used these lands was forced to adjust. The winter habitat used by waterfowl was reduced, and for tiny migratory songbirds, it became harder and harder to find the forests their species had always used as resting and feeding stations on their long route to and from Central and South America. Then, in 1963, the Army Corps of Engineers impounded part of the Chattahoochee River for navigation and stream flow control, creating Lake Eufaula. Held back by the Walter F. George Lock and Dam, the waters of the Chattahoochee are now used for recreation and power generation. In the 1960s, the words of Theodore Roosevelt, founding father of the National Refuge System, began to ring truer and truer for concerned citizens in the Chattahoochee Valley. As the work on Lake Eufaula progressed, an effort grew from a community desire to dedicate some land for wildlife. In 1964, the Eufaula National Wildlife Refuge opened. Today, the refuge covers over 11,000 acres of varied and vital habitats. One of about 600 refuges throughout the country, Eufaula shares their goals. The mission of the National Wildlife Refuge System is to administer a national network of lands and waters for the conservation, management, and where appropriate, restoration of the fish, wildlife, and plant resources and their habitats within the United States for the benefit of present and future generations of Americans. Throughout the year, an amazing variety of animals and birds use the refuge as either a temporary or permanent home. Nearly 300 species of birds can be seen here. making it a paradise for bird watchers and nature photographers. 2 observation decks are located along the 7-mile Wildlife Drive, providing views over fields and wetlands. In late fall and winter, the refuge is crowded with many species of waterfowl and wading birds, which have flown south for the winter. As many as 15,000 waterfowl may join the herons and geese feeding in the impoundments, making for lively bird watching. Many varieties of ducks can be seen diving and dipping for plants and small aquatic creatures. While waterfowl are here, the 7-mile Wildlife Drive is reduced to 5 miles to create areas for sanctuary. But there are still plenty of viewing places. From November until January, waterfowl hunting is allowed in designated areas of the refuge on certain days and only by permit. At this time of year, if you're lucky, you might also see some stately sandhill cranes, or hawks, osprey, and eagles on the refuge. By late winter, most of our bird visitors are leaving for their summer habitats in the north. But the coming of spring starts a frenzy of nest building among our resident birds. Great blue herons, great egrets, and other water birds begin to work in their communal rookeries in the refuge's wetlands. Early spring water levels in the wetlands are carefully managed to provide the best feeding conditions for wading birds and shorebirds. Wood ducks are also beginning to nest, but they use special boxes provided for them. These colorful birds were greatly reduced in number because of their unusual nesting habits. Unlike other ducks which nest on the ground, wood ducks prefer holes in old trees. Very few old trees remain in their nesting areas, so the wood ducks were severely reduced until the nesting box program was started. The wood ducks have taken to their constructed homes like, well, ducks to water. This is one story with a happy ending. By mid-spring, the refuge is alive with bird songs as the neotropical migrants pass through. These tuneful birds travel amazing distances each spring and fall, flying from as far north as Canada, where they nest, to as far south as South America, where they winter. This story is one that, so far, does not have a very happy ending. Habitat changes in the U.S. and deforestation in Central and South America is causing a continuing decline in songbird numbers. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service refuges provide resting and feeding stops for the migrants. We're forging international partnerships to secure the future of these species. Late spring heralds the arrival of one of our most curious-looking but welcome summer visitors, wood storks. Wood stork numbers have dropped because of habitat loss. They are now on the federal endangered species list. Wood storks have not nested in Alabama in years, but Eufaula Refuge is working to change that by trying to create optimum habitat. This story is still being written. We hope the final chapter includes nests filled with noisy chicks. Even in the heat of late summer, the refuge hosts migrating birds, such as blue-winged teal, and offers opportunities to see our resident birds and summer visitors feeding in the shallow waters. One prominent species shows how well cooperative efforts can work. It is the bald eagle. There are several nests in the area, and eagles can be seen fishing over the lake through the year. Only a few years ago, our national symbol was on the verge of extinction because the pesticide DDT had entered the food chain, creating eggs too fragile to hatch. A concerted nationwide effort to save the bald eagle has been successful,